When I was a couple weeks short of my 70th birthday, I started thinking about my mother's mother, who lived to be 100, and her mother, who lived to be 102, and my father, who lived to be 90, longer than anyone we had ever heard of in his family. I began to think that maybe our generation could be the first to routinely live to be 100. When I talked about this at family dinner one night, my granddaughter, who was 5, said,
"What are you going to do for the next 30 years, Grandpa?"
Hello, I'm Dr. Janet Price.
And I'm Gregg Kaloust. And we are Oldish. And this is our podcast, Oldish.
If you're oldish or know someone who is, please join us every week for conversations amongst ourselves
And our special guests
about what it means to be oldish in the 21st century.
If you ever wonder whether you're getting old, you're oldish. What are you going to do for the next 30 minutes?
Hi, I'm Greg, and I'm oldish.
Hi, I'm Janet, and I'm oldish. Welcome to this episode of our podcast, Oldish, Conversations on Aging in the 21st Century. Today, Greg, let's talk about what's happened in our political landscape of our country since we recorded our podcast episode following the debate with Biden and Trump. So a lot's happened, and I thought it might be interesting for you and I to chat about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And for those of you who didn't hear that one, a few weeks ago, right after the Biden and Trump debate, we did an episode asking the question, are these guys old or are they oldish? And we came to the conclusion that they were oldish because running for president is an oldish thing to do. It's not sitting around on the porch in a rocking chair with a blanket over your lap, whistling. It's a lot of work and it's a big thing to take on. One of the biggest things in the world to take on is being president of the United States. And these guys both felt like they were up for it. But I think what happened is that Joe Biden somehow listened to that episode and listened to us talk about old versus oldish and decided that he was old.
That must be what happened. I think that's probably a really good takeaway from that episode. And we really appreciate being able to help Biden with making that decision.
Yeah.
And it's made such a difference since that day in our country.
Yes, I think so. And I we'll take the credit and or the blame, depending on the listeners' politics. But I can't see any other reasonable way for that to have happened. We eliminated all the other options, so that must be it. So just in case he didn't also listen to it, tomorrow morning I'll be sending a link to that episode to the other guy, and we'll see if we can't have a repeat. And that repeat, that'd be almost like a double-blind study. That repeat would prove it. If it happens again, that proves it.
If what happens again? If Trump drops out?
Yeah. If he listens to it and says, oh, yeah, I am old, holy smokes, and drops out, then, and I would say to the world at large, you're welcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's hope that happens. But in the meantime, let's talk about what's been happening since Biden dropped out and why that seems to have made such a big difference for each of us individually and how we're feeling about the state of the country. And apparently so many around the country are talking more about this as the campaign of joy and hope. And a lot of people that were saying they were not interested or invested in this election are now coming out by the thousands to work in this campaign.
When I first heard that Joe Biden had dropped out, my first response was a very complex gratitude, really grateful to him for having been there in the first place. I actually think that he was a great president at a time when the country really needed him. And he obviously has been a great servant of the American way for all these years, congressman, senator, vice president, and president, just a huge record of service to the American people with the attitude that it was service to the American people. So I feel a lot of gratitude to Joe Biden for having been there. But I also feel gratitude for Joe Biden for having the sense to step aside and let the energy change. I feel like the channel got changed. And the whole story was this grumpy old man, that grumpy old man, this guy's a head case, that guy's useless. That was the whole political story. And our future is at stake. We can't have that. So by stepping aside and letting somebody with obviously big energy step into the place, and somebody who's awake and alert and has big energy and the good sense to choose somebody else with big energy as a running mate, I just feel like this cloud lifted. And I try not to get too bound down in earthly politics, but it felt to me like a cloud was lifted and everything brightened up.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. I'm sitting here thinking about what it means when you're oldish to decide and recognize that it's time to stop, or it's time to step down, or it's time to change the channel for yourself. And I think so many of us can relate to what I can imagine it was like for Biden, that he was saying he still had work to do. He wanted to follow up in this next 4 years with all the things that he'd been working on. He was very committed to being president for another 4 years. I think all of us who are oldish can relate to, on some level, what is that like? How do you decide that it's time to step aside? And sometimes it's decided for us. We get sick or something happens, but sometimes it's what happened with Joe Biden. He had to make a very, very difficult decision, which for us and our podcast is so relevant. How do you decide that? And when you look at the other person, he needs to be making that decision also for his own reasons. But he also is someone who is oldish and putting a lot of energy into an election, but not showing any signs that he's up for the task. And I guess that's probably a political statement, but I'm trying to talk about it from an oldish perspective.
I can't imagine the effort and energy it would take to be running a campaign like that, and then to be running the country. And he can go back to being an oldish person after the election. And after Kamala's president, he can relax, get some rest, but he can go back to being an oldish person. He can do a Jimmy Carter and spend the rest of a long life continuing to make a huge difference in the world and set an example. Our guest that we talked with the other day, Dr. Gloria Horsley, said that one of the things we get to do as oldish people is be exemplars. And he can get to be an exemplar of what it's like to be oldish, which is may turn out in terms of the whole universe, might be a more important job than being president of the United States. But it's certainly a lot easier than being president of the United States. All the stuff that they have to deal with.
Yes. And again, this is a major theme for our podcast, which is as we are moving through aging, being oldish is switching the channel, whether it's retiring and then recognizing, okay, now I can do this, or letting go of one path that it's time to let go of while finding ways to be exemplars. And I think that many of our guests, I think probably all of our guests we've had them on because they could bring an example of what is it like to switch that channel, turn the corner from something you might have been doing your whole adult life, and now finding where your path is as an oldish person?
I'm hopeful that once he gets some rest, that Biden makes that choice. And I certainly would hope that the other guy would make that same choice or a similar choice come January, when it would have, you would think there would have to be a huge relief to him to not have to be president, not have to be running for president, and can just go sit and grumble about the election being stolen from him, but he doesn't actually have to do the rest of it. So then maybe he'll turn to be an exemplar of oldish golfing or something.
Well, that's very hopeful thinking. I have to say, as a psychologist, and I can say this because the American Psychological Association came out back in 2016 when Trump was running for president, when he was president, came out and diagnosed him as being narcissistic personality disorder and other diagnoses. So what you're saying is possibly wishful thinking, because that's not how a narcissist would respond, as we've seen, to losing. But there's always that possibility. And again, if he's listening to our podcast, like Biden did, we might make a really big difference in the trajectory of his life too, his choices.
Oh, I just had a great idea. Let's in February, after they've had a chance to rest up, let's have them both on as guests at the same time and say, okay, you guys aren't debating to see who's going to be the next president of the United States. Let's just talk about how this has been for you guys. Let's talk about how is it now that you have no further responsibilities than just to be oldish and to be grandparents and play golf if you want to, or whatever. You can, what's the thing they always say when a politician resigns? They always say that it's you spend more time with your family. So yeah, so here's your chance. You can spend more time with your family. Come on and talk to us about being oldish and express your gratitude to us for saving you from the horrible fate of being politicians past your prime.
I think that's an awesome idea, Greg. And I think we might even be instrumental in helping each of them chart out the next years, how they can be exemplars. What are they thinking about this new phase of being oldish? So absolutely. And I'm looking forward to it.
I think it'll be awesome. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be recording with them on February 15th. If there's any changes to that schedule, we'll be sure to let you know in advance so you don't waste the time gathering around the radio in the living room next to the coal stove. Yeah, there we go. That's a good one.
All right. I'm excited. I'm pleased. I knew that our podcast would have great impact on many people. I did not know that it would be this big, and I'm very excited. So February 15th, everybody, we'll be back to talk about this some more.
Yep. And March 17th next year, we'll have the Pope and the Dalai Lama will be on to talk about their adventures. Yeah, we're just going to continue to have fun. So we're not going to take up any more of your time today, folks. We just wanted to check in and let you know how we had changed the world already and how much better we feel having changed the world. And we look forward to talking with you next time.
Sounds good, Greg.
Thanks, Janet. Been fun.
Bye. It's been fun. Goodbye.
That's it for now. Thanks for listening. We had great fun with this one and hope you did too. Tune in next time when we sit down with Dr. Gloria Horsley and Dr. Frank Powers, two psychotherapists who met online on the dating site Silver Signals, fell in love, and wrote a book together. It's Open to Love, The Secrets of Senior Dating. If you're oldish and exploring or considering the brave new world of online dating, you'll find this book a valuable resource, and we'll bet you enjoy our conversation with them as much as we did. You can leave comments or requests for topics or guests
on this or other episodes at www.oldish.me. There's a link there too if you've wondered how you can help support our podcast. If you like what you heard today, please tell a friend and rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.